Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I just wanted to say quickly, because I am on Skype, I am waiting for Robin Ha, who is the first author slash illustrator that I'm going to be interviewing this week. So yeah. So we're here to talk today about Almost American Girl, your memoir that I am so excited. It's coming in the mail. I was supposed to get it today, but it hasn't arrived yet. So we'll see if I can actually get that, because I know the shipping people have been like contacting everyone and being like, this may take 3 weeks. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. So in your own words, what is Almost American Girl about?
It's a graphic novel and a memoir about myself as a 14-year-old moving from Seoul, South Korea to Huntsville, Alabama in 1995. So my mother told me we're going on a vacation, and then when we got there, she, got married, and we never went back. So I had to basically go to school, without speaking in English, and they had no ESL classes.
Really?
So it was just my saga into, transforming myself into being an Korean American girl. Yep.
So how did you get from Alabama to Northern Virginia?
So my mom had a few relatives who were living in Northern Virginia. So when my mom, spoiler alert, her marriage didn't go well, so we were trying to move, and she didn't want to go back to Korea, so she basically just contacted her, relatives to help her out. So that's why we moved to Northern Virginia. Yep.
I'm just curious because I've never been to Alabama. Is Alabama different than Northern Virginia?
Very much.
Very much? Yeah. Okay. Because I've never been to Alabama, and I'm like, that's so cool. So did you always know you wanted to illustrate and create a story about your own life, your experience from Korea to America?
No, I had no desire to make a memoir. Like when I was young, I read comics constantly, but most comics I read were like fictional comics. Most of them are fantasies and romance and sci-fi. So it was very far away from my like daily life. So when I like wanted to become a cartoonist, I always thought that I would be drawing something like that, the ones that I was reading. But when I actually became an adult and started pursuing, my dream of becoming a cartoonist, I realized writing a long length fiction is really hard, and you have to have a good story ready before you start drawing anything, because it's really hard for you to go back once you start drawing. It's hard to go back and fix things once when you figure out your story's not working. So I was thinking very hard about like what do I already have, in my experience that I could possibly make it into comics. And this time period really stood out for me because it was such a transformative and challenging time in my life. I mean, it was the hardest time of my life. So I thought it was a great opportunity for me to kind of dig in and figure out, how I made it out through this really difficult time. And also, like my life just changed completely. So yeah, so that's why I chose that time period.
So you were talking about you already have to have a story to start illustrating. So what was that process like? Did you first formulate the idea, then draw, or did you draw, then formulate the ideas?
Well, I definitely started with writing. So I spent at least a year and a half developing a story that I'm like completely sure of. Because writing a memoir is not like writing a diary. You have to have a theme and you have to have a focus on your storyline. So you're not just like telling the reader like, oh, I woke up, I ate this, and I play with a doll. It's not like that. So you have to really think of your life objectively and pick out the events that kind of fits into your narrative. So I had to do a lot of digging into, my diary, my letters and photos, all this, like these artifacts from 20 years ago, and kind of make a story that I can actually be really happy with. And also like I can have it as a, basically a story. It's not like a documentation, it's a story. So I spent a lot of time developing a story. So it was actually like not that different from like writing a fictional novel. Whether you're writing a fictional novel or you're writing a memoir, you still have to do basically the same amount of work, you know? But the only difference is that like your life, so you kind of know like where it's gonna go and how it's gonna end. Whereas if you're writing a fiction, you're like a lot of times you're like just not sure of where it's
how
going.
it's gonna end.
Yeah, so that's like the only difference really, from writing fiction or nonfiction. So so I spent a whole lot of time just writing, and I basically did the same thing as other fiction writers. I bought like Scrivener and all this like tools so I could just like play out with the writing. And then once that was done, I started submitting to a whole bunch of agents and publishers. So by that point, I had to do like sample pages basically. So with pitching graphic novel, you don't have to have an entire book finished as a comic book. So usually you'd have a storyline and you'll have a few sample pages and you'd have like some sketches of the characters and things like that. So I did that, and then after I found the publisher, that's when I actually started drawing the actual pages.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So since this is a memoir about your life, is there any one piece of advice if you could tell yourself at that age?
I think I would tell myself that everything will be fine. But like as a teenager, nobody believes that.
Right.
Everything is like the end of the world, and it's so dramatic. Everything's over, and you're doomed forever. So I know that wouldn't have worked anyway. But I think I would tell myself to be patient. I think like I was very miserable for at least a year, but that's just a year of my entire life. And like when you're younger, I guess because you have lived fewer years,
right,
you feel like that's a huge chunk, and it'll like last forever. Everything just seems like it's forever, but like whatever situation you're in, like it will pass eventually. And I think knowing that now, like because of the experience and other experience I've gone through, like I know that even if I have some really huge problem in my life or like something's not working out, I would tell myself, look, this will pass and somehow you will get through it. So I think that's the message that I want to give it to myself as a 14-year-old and whoever else is going through a difficult time.
Yeah. All right.
And also right now, I think right now this
Honestly,
is a very challenging
that's why
time, but
you were saying,
like it seems like it's very scary, but it will pass. We'll make it out somehow. It'll work out.
I think this. My hope is that it'll all be over by May, and then I can go buy toilet paper in peace. But
yes, we'll get there. We'll get there. No worries. Just right now it's difficult. But in a few months, hopefully, everyone will be back to normal.
So, are there 3 authors or illustrators that inspire you to do what you do?
There are so many amazing cartoonists I look up to and I admire. I used to read a lot of Japanese and Korean comics when I was little because that was like the only comics that were available. So like there are several cartoonists in Korea that I loved and I still love them. One of them, her name is Shin Il-suk. Her comics are not really translated into English yet, I think. But she wrote a lot of like really epic fantasy, like Lord of the Rings, that kind of like fantasy, like really high fantasy with like magic and like witches and knights and all that. So I was super into her stuff. And there's a Japanese cartoonist named Ikeda Ryoko, and she did The Rose of Versailles. So that is like a huge mega hit from like the 70s, I think, from Japan, and like it's made into like anime, and it's even made into like all women like musical trip. Like there's like it's become a lot of things, in Japan. And I read that when I was like maybe like 7 or 8 years old, and I still think it holds up to the test of time. It's really good. Yep. And in America, I love Mike Mignola. I think he's one of the best cartoonists ever, lived. And also, I love Mobius from, I think, is he French or Dutch? I don't know, but he's a
European.
French artist, European artist, and he did a lot of sci-fi comics. And also, I love Jean Louis Yang. He did American Born Chinese and Boxer and Saints, and I think he just came out of another one called Hoop Dream. I think he's an amazing Asian American cartoonist, and I think he's also a really good writer. I think he worked in Avatar, the Airbender
really?
series too. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, I really like his stuff.
All right. Well, I mean, that kind of got to the point of my next question, which was, did you have a favorite comic book series you liked to read as a teenager? Like a one series that you were like, when the novel came, or when the comic book came out, you were like, I have to get it?
Well, it's by the Korean author that I mentioned. She had a series called The Four Daughters of Armian. So it's like an epic fantasy series set in I don't know, 500 BCE or something, in Middle East. She created this fictional kingdom, near I guess near Iran. So she did a lot of research in that time period. So it's actually based in real history. So there are a lot of historical figures that appears, but it's a completely fictional fantasy story. It's awesome. And they're all these gods and goddesses. They're kind of based on the Roman gods or Greek gods, but it's also kind of twisted in her vision, and she created new gods, and it was really insane. I loved it. I have the entire series still. I bought it when I went to Korea 10 years ago. I bought an entire set of it so I could take it home. So my suitcase was half full of her comics.
I love that. It reminds me of me packing for coming back home for college. I had to pack all my books. It's this big. I was like, oh gosh. So do you think you would still be a cartoonist illustrator if you didn't move to the United States?
I think so. I mean, I was pretty set on what I wanted to do by age of 6.
Oh wow!
I always wanted to be a cartoonist. So
I still I even went into college not knowing what I wanted to do. So that's, to me, that's pretty cool. So are you currently reading anything?
I'm reading a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, I'm reading way too many stuff right now.
I know,
but
me too.
I borrowed a whole bunch of books from the library, all by Linda Berry. Linda Berry is an American cartoonist, and she does a lot of really awesome books about making comics, basically. But it's not about technical aspects of making comics. It's more about conceptual, and she writes a lot about how comics, you can use drawing comics as a mental health tool. So I really like her stuff, and I've been reading a lot of her, all of her stuff right now. So
that's cool. I actually like that, because I think in today's world, I think more people have trouble with conceptualizing ideas than actually fulfilling those ideas. So I think that's really interesting. So I was like, oh, maybe I should get that book. So what advice do you have for new illustrators, cartoonists, authors that are just starting out?
I'll say start small and finish it. So don't try your epic fantasy comic that's 500 pages long as your first project, because you're not gonna finish it. I guarantee you're not gonna finish it. So if you're a brand new cartoonist or writer and you've never written anything, just try to write a short story with to making 20 pages long story, and then 40 pages. Oh,
there we go. All right, are we back?
Did
Okay.
you?
I was like, poor connection. Oh no. And it
Uh,
was going so
did
well.
you? Were you able to hear me?
Can you repeat it just in case?
Oh, okay. So I would suggest to start small. So write something like less than 10 pages and then finish it. And once you're done with that, you can start writing 20 pages long thing and then finish it, move on to 40 pages. So like just, you can go like, double what you have finished, but don't go crazy from the get-go. Because you're gonna get burned out. It's really easy to get burned out as a cartoonist. So you need to pace yourself, and also, if you're in like a writer's blog or cartoonist blog, which happens to everyone, just don't beat yourself over it too much because it happens to everyone. And like, the worst thing. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Is it work? Like the worst thing you can do is stare at your bad drawing or bad writing and just like beat yourself over it and just don't know what to do about it. So just take a break, like trust yourself that you'll be able to figure it out. Just take a break, go outside, play with your friends. And then a day or two later, not just like an hour later, like a day or two later, you can come back to it and then you can see it with your fresh eyes and then you'll be able to figure it out.
I like that a lot. I think that's for even writing especially. I think that's something that writer's block does happen. I'm a writer on a series on YouTube, and right now I'm with my co-writer, and she and I are having trouble. And I said, look, let's take a break. Let's take a week because this is like our 12th episode.
It's very fun to take a break.
Yeah. So, and she's like, all right, and I was like, let's just leave it alone. We'll come back, and I bet you we'll be able to finish it. And she's like, okay.
Uh-oh. I think the connection's back. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So is there something new you're working on currently that you can share?
Yeah, I have another book contract with the same publisher. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's with the same publisher, Balder and Bray. So I'm working on a complete fiction. It's an epic fantasy fiction.
Yeah.
So I'm finally doing something I wanted to do as a kid.
Get the serious stuff out of the way first, and then focus on the more fiction. I get it. All right, and then last question is, where can everyone find you on social media?
So my Twitter and Instagram handle is robinhaart. And if you go there, there's all my, website and everything else information.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for watching the video today. I hope you enjoyed it, and more interviews coming soon. Bye.
Take care. Bye.